Jake was the only human working at the alien trade station. He worked in maintenance, fixing power lines, air filters, and broken machines. Most aliens ignored him, some gave him cold looks, and others just stayed away. Jake didn't mind. He liked the quiet. But today, something strange was in the air. While eating lunch near the center dome, Jake noticed a strange alien girl sitting by herself. She had 4 smooth tentacles curling gently on the floor, decorated with shiny silver rings. Her skin was light purple, her eyes glowing blue like stars in water. Jake had never seen her before. She looked lonely, her eyes watching the sky through the glass dome above. Jake felt something pull him toward her. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was her calm beauty. He stood up, walked a little closer, and then stopped. He didn't know why he opened his mouth, but the words slipped out before he could stop them. "Your tentacles look great today," Jake said with a small smile. The moment he spoke, everything changed. The air seemed to freeze. A nearby alien dropped his tray, another gasped loudly. Even the humming of the machine stopped. Or maybe it just felt that way. The alien girl stared at him with wide eyes, her face turning a deeper shade of purple. She blinked, opened her mouth, and then fainted right in her seat. Her body fell to the ground with a soft thump, her silver rings clinking. Jake rushed forward. "Hey, are you okay?" He didn't touch her. He knew some aliens hated being touched, but he crouched beside her. Before he could say anything else, alarms rang out from the walls. 4 armored guards stormed in from the hallway, shouting something in a language Jake didn't know. The guards pushed Jake back roughly and pointed weapons at him. One of them scanned the girl, then yelled into his cum device. Within seconds, more guards arrived, this time wearing royal emblems. One of them, taller than the rest, looked at Jake with a cold, serious face. "You," he said in broken English. "Come with us now." Jake tried to ask what was going on, but they didn't listen. They surrounded him and walked him down a narrow hallway. Jake felt dozens of alien eyes watching him as he passed. He didn't understand. Was it something he said? Was the compliment wrong? Offensive? He was led to a small chamber with soft lights and glowing walls. Inside stood an old alien woman dressed in flowing robes. She looked at Jake with curiosity, then gave a small nod. "Wait here," she said calmly, and left. Jake sat on a bench, hands shaking, heart racing. He kept replaying the moment in his head. All he did was compliment her tentacles. Was that some kind of insult, or something worse? He had no idea what rule he had broken. The door slid open again, and this time, 2 guards carried the girl in gently. She was awake now, but her face was still red. She pointed at Jake and said something in her language, her voice soft but firm. The guards stepped back, and she slowly walked toward him. Jake stood up, unsure what to do. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to upset you." The girl tilted her head, looking at him closely. "You are human?" she asked in slow English. Jake nodded. "Yes, I'm Jake. I work here." She took a deep breath, her eyes shining strangely. "No outsider has ever said the binding words," she whispered. Jake blinked. "The what?" She stepped even closer, so close he could see tiny patterns on her skin. "When a male speaks those words to an unbound female of my kind, it is a vow," she said. "A vow of heart, protection, and union." Jake's mouth dropped open. "I was just being nice," he said, panicked. The guards in the room didn't move. They just stared. The girl looked at them, then back at Jake. "You spoke them from the heart, without fear," she said softly. "Now you must face the royal court." "Wait, what?" "No, I didn't mean it that way." Jake shouted, but it was too late. 2 more royal guards entered and took him gently but firmly by the arms. The girl followed them silently, her face unreadable. Jake's head spun. What started as a small compliment was now turning into something huge. He didn't know the rules, didn't understand the culture. All he knew was this: he said something that changed everything, and now the aliens were taking him to the court. To decide his fate, Jake walked through the long glowing hallway. Pulled gently by the guards, he didn't struggle, but inside his heart beat like a war drum. The air was colder here, cleaner, and smelled like salt water. Strange lights moved across the walls like waves, as if the hallway itself was alive. Behind him, the alien girl followed silently, her tentacles flowing behind her like ribbons in the wind. She hadn't spoken since the room, and Jake didn't dare ask anything. He had a feeling that every word might make things worse. They reached a tall gate carved from shimmering blue stone. Without a sound, it opened, revealing a massive chamber with clear water flowing along the sides. Alien figures stood in long rows, dressed in glowing robes, some with silver masks, some with bare faces that shimmered like liquid. Jake was led to the center, where a platform rose from the floor like a smooth pearl. The alien girl stepped beside him, her eyes calm, but her fingers trembling slightly. An old voice echoed through the hall, not loud, but powerful. The human male who spoke the words stands before us. Jake looked around, trying to find who spoke. Then he saw her, a tall alien woman seated above the others, her tentacles longer, her skin brighter, her voice sharp like ice. Jake guessed she was the queen or something close to it. The girl beside him stepped forward and bowed her head. "I am Thalia, daughter of House Virel," she said. This human spoke the binding words to me without fear. The hall filled with gasps and murmurs. The water at the edges rippled as if reacting to their voices. The queen leaned forward, staring directly at Jake. "You speak of union," she said to him slowly. "Do you understand what you have done?" Jake swallowed hard. "No, Your Highness," he said. "I just said something kind. I didn't mean it as..." "Intent means nothing once the bond is spoken," the queen interrupted. Jake looked at Thalia, who avoided his eyes. He felt trapped, like falling into a hole he didn't know was there. He had just complimented her, nothing more. But here, that meant something huge, too huge. The queen raised her hand and the whispers stopped. "The bond has been awakened after 200 years, she said. "Whether by fate or by mistake, it must now be faced." Jake wanted to shout, to say. He didn't ask for this, but deep inside, he could feel something strange, something warm. Thalia was different from all the aliens he'd seen before. He wasn't sure if it was her quiet voice or her steady gaze. But it didn't feel like a mistake anymore. A male alien in gold armor stepped forward, his eyes sharp and his voice cold. "This is unacceptable," he said. "That bond should have been mine." Jake frowned. Looking at the man, he was tall, his tentacles heavier, and he carried a blade at his side that pulsed with green light. Thalia finally looked up, her voice soft but steady. "You refused the right, Zorik, and broke the circle," she said. "You lost your claim." Zorik's face darkened, and his eyes burned into Jake like fire. "I will not lose to a fragile surface creature," he growled. "I challenge him for the bond." The crowd let out a low hiss, and Jake felt the floor tilt beneath him. Challenge? Fight? Was this a real thing? Jake turned to Thalia. "Is he serious?" She nodded, her face pale. "Yes," she whispered. "He wants a duel." Jake laughed nervously. "I'm not a fighter, I fix machines." Zorik stepped closer, towering over him. "Then prepare to be broken like one." Jake raised his hands. "Can I just say I was joking and walk away?" The queen's voice rang out, sharp and final. "The challenge is made," she said. "It must be answered." The floor beneath Jake began to lower, forming a ring surrounded by rising water. Guards tossed a strange-looking suit toward him, its parts clicking with metal and coral. Thalia stepped beside him quickly, grabbing his arm. "You don't have to win," she whispered. "You only have to survive." Jake looked at the alien armor in his hands, then back at the furious warrior waiting below. He sighed deeply. I just said she had nice tentacles, and now he was about to fight for his life. Jake stood in the center of the dueling ring, wearing armor that didn't quite fit. The suit was made of smooth shell and soft fabric, with strange joints that clicked when he moved. Water surrounded the platform like a pool, rising and falling with the breathing of the chamber. Across from him, Zorak waited, his blade humming with a sick green light. His tentacles twitched, his eyes full of anger. To him, this wasn't just a duel, it was personal. Jake didn't want to fight. He wasn't trained, he wasn't fast. And he didn't even understand the rules. He had fixed broken pipes and polished power cores. Now he was expected to survive a duel against a warrior born and trained for this. A loud chime echoed, and the fight began. Zorak moved first, fast like lightning. Jake ducked just in time as the blade swung over his head. The audience gasped, but Jake was too busy trying not to fall to hear them. He rolled sideways, landed on his stomach, and scrambled up. His armor buzzed and clicked with each movement. It had some kind of smart control, like a soft exoskeleton. It helped him move faster. But it couldn't think for him. Zorak laughed coldly and charged again. Jake grabbed a metal rod from the arena floor. Maybe it was a weapon or just decoration. He didn't care. He blocked the strike clumsily, sparks flying. The rod bent, but it saved his life. Thalia stood above the arena, hands clenched tightly. She didn't speak, but her eyes never left Jake. She knew he wasn't a warrior, but something about him made her believe he might survive. Humans were unpredictable, full of chaos and cleverness. Maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Jake jumped backward, panting hard. Zorak was toying with him, waiting for the right moment to finish it. Jake remembered something from Earth, a game where smaller fighters used tricks. Not power. He glanced at the water around the arena. The edge of the platform just wet enough. A plan sparked in his mind. He ran left, then right, dodging wildly. Zorak followed, annoyed. Jake led him in a wide circle, staying near the water's edge. Then he pretended to stumble, falling close to the slippery rim. Zorak roared and lunged forward. Jake rolled out of the way at the last second. Zorak's foot slipped, his balance breaking for one heartbeat. Jake took the rod and struck behind Zorak's knee joint. The warrior fell forward, his weapon skidding across the stone. The arena burst into gasps and loud alien cheers. Zorak tried to stand, but Jake had already grabbed his blade. He held it awkwardly, pointing it toward Zorak. His hands shook, but his eyes were steady. "I don't want to hurt you," Jake said. "I just want this to stop." Zorak snarled, but stayed down. The queen raised her hand, and the arena fell silent. She studied Jake for a long time before speaking. "Victory does not always belong to the strongest," she said. "It belongs to the one who adapts." Jake lowered the blade. Breathing hard, he had done it. He didn't win with strength, but with speed and luck and a little human nonsense. Guards helped Zorak up and carried him away. Jake turned toward Thalia, who was now walking down the steps to meet him. She looked at him with something new in her eyes, not just curiosity, but respect, maybe more. "You survived," she said softly. Jake smiled. "Barely." Thalia looked at the blade in his hand. Then at his face. "You didn't kill him," she said. Jake shrugged. "Didn't want to." She stepped closer, so close Jake could hear her slow breathing. "Our people believe that mercy is the mark of wisdom," she whispered. Jake felt his heart skip. He didn't understand her world, her rules, or what just happened, but standing there with her, it almost didn't matter behind them. The queen stood again. "The right has been honored," she said. "The bond must now be acknowledged." Jake looked at Thalia, confused again. "What does that mean?" he asked quietly. Thalia's cheeks turned a deeper color, her tentacles curling softly. "It means," she said, "you're not just a guest anymore." Before he could reply, the floor beneath them began to shift. A circle of light formed around them, symbols glowing in the air. The ritual had started, and Jake had no idea what was coming next. Jake had never felt heat and cold at the same time, but now, standing in the middle of the glowing ring with ancient symbols rising around him, he felt both. His body tingled, his head spun, and his thoughts raced with too many questions. He looked at Thalia, her face calm but her eyes shining with worry. She tried to hide it, But Jake could tell something about this ritual scared her too. The lights grew brighter, forming shapes above them, circles, lines, and spirals. They pulsed with slow rhythm, like the heartbeat of something deep beneath the surface. Aliens around the chamber watched in silence, their eyes glowing faintly. Even the queen had stopped speaking, her gaze fixed on Jake. The light circled around his chest, then around Thalia's hands. Jake could feel warmth rising inside him, something ancient and heavy pressing into his mind. It was not pain, but it wasn't comfort either. Like being scanned by a force that wanted to see inside his soul. A voice echoed not from anyone present, but from the air itself. Two paths meet, one foreign, one forgotten. Will the bond be accepted, or shall the sea return it to the deep? Jake felt a sharp pull in his chest. Like something inside him was answering, without thinking. He reached out and grabbed Thalia's hand. Her fingers closed around his, and the lights suddenly stopped moving. The symbols faded, the humming slowed, and silence filled the chamber. Then came the sound of rushing water, deep and loud. The floor beneath them shook gently, and a wall on the far side of the chamber opened. Behind it, water flowed like a living river. Glowing blue, out of it stepped a tall, armored creature, twice the size of Zorik. Its body covered in scales and coral blades, its eyes burned gold, and its voice sounded like stone grinding against metal. "The bond has not been sealed," it said. "A challenge remains." Jake froze. "Another one?" He whispered. Thalia's grip tightened on his hand. "That is a bond warden," she whispered quickly. "A protector of our race's deepest laws." Jake looked up at the massive figure as it approached, water dripping from its sharp limbs. "You have proven survival," the warden said. "Now you must prove protection." Jake didn't understand what that meant until the lights dimmed and a door opened behind them. From the shadows came a new figure. It was smaller than the warden, but no less terrifying, slick black skin. Glowing red veins and a face with too many eyes. It let out a low growl, stepping toward Thalia. Jake stepped in front of her without thinking. The alien hissed, sharp claws clicking against the floor. The warden spoke again. "Protect her from what you do not understand." Jake didn't have a weapon, just the bond suit and his bare hands. He looked around the platform for anything useful but saw nothing. The creature leaped forward, claws ready to strike. Jake ducked and grabbed a loose stone from the floor. Smashing it into the alien's chest, it roared but didn't stop. Swiping at him and tearing his sleeve, Jake rolled aside. Grabbing one of the glowing rods that had dropped earlier, he held it like a staff, facing the creature behind him. Thalia called out, "Don't kill it, defend, but do not destroy." Jake gritted his teeth and nodded. The alien lunged again, but Jake used a rod to knock its legs out. He didn't fight with anger, he moved with purpose, blocking attacks. Taking hits and standing again, he wasn't winning by force, but by refusing to fall. Minutes passed like hours until the creature stepped back and crouched low. Panting hard, it looked at Jake, then turned and walked away without another sound. The warden lowered his head. "The bond is real," he said, "and the protector has been chosen." Jake fell to his knees. Gasping for air, his arms shaking, he looked up at Thalia, who ran to his side and knelt beside him. "You did it," she whispered, her eyes wide with emotion. Jake smiled weakly. "I really didn't mean to get this involved." Thalia let out a soft laugh, her tentacles wrapping lightly around his arm. "Too late for that now," she said gently. "You're part of our world." The queen stood again, her voice strong. "Let it be known. The human Jake has passed both trials. He will be given a place within our court as bond protector of Thalia." The chamber echoed with quiet approval, the crowd slowly bowing their heads. Jake looked at Thalia, his heart pounding not from fear, but from something else. Maybe trust, maybe fate, or maybe something just beginning. He had come to fix wires, not hearts, but now he belonged to something strange and deep, and the bond between them had only just begun. The days passed like a quiet storm. Jake was given a chamber inside the Royal Coral Tower, where light moved like water across the walls. He had never slept in something so soft, nor eaten food that shimmered with color, but comfort didn't bring peace. He still didn't understand why everything felt so heavy around him, like he was walking through a dream too large to wake from. Everywhere he went, aliens bowed their heads or whispered behind his back. He wasn't just the human anymore. He was Thalia's bond protector, a living symbol of an ancient vow. But the weight of that vow grew heavier each day, especially when Thalia stopped smiling. She had grown distant since the trial. Not cold, but quieter. She spent more time alone, in the memory pools, sitting in silence, her tentacles resting across the glowing surface. Jake watched her sometimes from a distance, unsure if he should speak. He wanted to ask what was wrong, but the silence between them felt sacred, like breaking it would shatter something important. One night, he followed her deeper into the temple caverns beneath the city. He found her inside a chamber lit with soft blue crystals, standing in front of a wall covered in carvings. She didn't turn when he entered, but she knew he was there. Her voice was soft, as if remembering something far away. "Our tentacles hold more than blood," she said. "They carry memories, emotions, voices from the past." Jake stepped closer, trying to understand. "You mean like DNA?" She nodded slowly. "Each ring we wear isn't just decoration," she whispered. "It seals part of ourselves, a part of our history." Jake looked at the silver rings wrapped around her limbs, each one humming softly in the air. He had never thought of them as anything more than jewelry, but now they seemed like chains that held her together. "Long ago," she said, "there were humans and our kind, joined in deep bonds, before war came and washed everything away." The words you spoke were lost for generations. Jake felt a chill crawl down his spine. "So when I said your tentacles looked great, you spoke the language of the bond," she said, finishing his thought. It wasn't just a compliment, it was a call. Jake sat down beside her, unsure what to say. He had always thought words were just noise, but here they carried weight. Here they woke sleeping powers. Thalia unwrapped one of her rings and placed it in his hand. It was warm, pulsing faintly like a small heart. Jake looked at her, unsure. "Why give this to me?" "It holds the memory of my first trial," she said. "My failure." Jake looked at her carefully. "You failed?" She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "I tried to bond once before, with Zorik. It ended in ruin." Jake looked down at the ring, suddenly realizing how deep her wounds were. She wasn't just afraid of the bond. They both were. But he also realized something else. She was trusting him with her past, something her people never shared easily. He closed his fingers around the ring, holding it carefully. "Then I'll carry this memory too," he said. "If you let me." Thalia looked at him with wide eyes, her tentacles moving slowly. She reached out and touched his forehead gently. "You are strange, Jake," she said softly. "Strange and pure." The crystals around them began to glow brighter. A humming sound filled the chamber, slow and peaceful. Jake felt something shift in the air. The ring in his hand pulsed, and a small flash of light passed between them. It wasn't a weapon or a test. It was a moment. Above them, something ancient stirred. An old intelligence awakened, hidden in the roots of their city. The bond between human and alien had not only returned, it had reconnected something deeper, a power buried long ago beneath war and silence. The queen sat alone in her chamber when she felt it. She rose slowly, walked to her window, and looked down at the sea's edge. She whispered to herself, "It has begun again." Far away, in the dark corners of space, others felt it too. Enemies that once hunted bonds like these, and they would return. But Jake didn't know that yet. All he knew was the warmth in his hand, the soft look in Thalia's eyes, and the feeling that he no longer walked alone. The peace didn't last long. It started with a strange vibration in the walls of the city. Not a sound, but a deep pulse, like a heartbeat that didn't belong. Jake felt it first while walking along the outer corridors, looking for Thalia. The lights flickered, then dimmed. He placed his hand on the nearest panel and felt the tremble again. Stronger this time, Thalia appeared moments later, her face tense, her rings buzzing with low energy. "They're here," she said. No fear in her voice, only certainty. Jake didn't need to ask who they were. He saw it in her eyes. Saw it in the way the guards rushed past them without speaking. The old enemy had returned, the ones who hated the bond, who feared it, who once tried to erase it from history. Sirens rang through the corridors, but they didn't scream. They sang, a haunting melody that echoed through the water-carved walls, a warning from long ago. Jake followed Thalia to the surface chambers where the leaders gathered. The queen stood at the center, her robes glowing with armor hidden beneath. Behind her was a large display showing the edges of their territory. Strange dark shapes approached. Fast, too fast, ships shaped like claws, marked with the old war symbols. "Scourge vessels," the queen said. "They cross our border without a word." "Not for war," said Thalia, stepping forward. "They come for the bond." Jake listened. As the room grew heavy with silence, he felt eyes turning toward him. Not with anger, but with hope and desperation. He had become more than a guest, more than a symbol. He had become a key, and they all knew it. "You should go back," Thalia said quietly, standing beside him. Her voice was soft, almost kind. "You have no duty to fight our war." Jake shook his head slowly. "I didn't survive trials. Protect you and carry your memories just to run. I stay." Thalia's tentacles brushed his arm gently, not as a warrior, but as someone grateful. The queen nodded once, then turned to the others. "Prepare the city," she said, "and arm the protector." Jake was given a new suit, sleek silver, and fitted with memory metal that adjusted to his body. It was light but strong, flexible, like skin and powered by thought. Inside the arm was a thin blade hidden under a seal, and on his back, a compact shield that opened like a fan. He didn't feel like a soldier, but he looked like one. When the enemy ships arrived, the water above the city boiled from their engines. They didn't speak, didn't send signals. They just dropped metal orbs that drilled into the coral and released small crawling machines. Jake joined Thalia at the front line, standing with warriors of every color and size. The city defenders formed circles, fighting like waves, always flowing, always moving. Jake stayed close to Thalia, protecting her like his title promised. She fought with grace and power, her tentacles spinning like blades, her rings glowing with ancient energy. Every time one of the machines reached for her, Jake was already there, blocking, smashing, pushing back. Their movements were no longer separate. They fought as one. During a pause in the battle, Jake saw something high above a larger ship, darker than the others, descending slowly. It pulsed with red light, and from it came a figure wrapped in shadows. It hovered in the air, watching the battle below. Jake felt his chest tighten. Whoever that was, they weren't just a leader, they were something else entirely. Thalia saw it too, and her face grew pale. "That is a bond breaker," she whispered. "They erase bonds from the soul." Jake didn't understand how that was possible, but his instincts told him it was real. The bond breaker raised a hand and pointed toward Jake, without a word. The machines began to shift, ignoring the city, moving straight toward him. He stood his ground, holding his shield in one hand and his blade in the other. Thalia moved to his side, eyes glowing with defiance. "I won't let them take you," she said. "Then let's show them what a real bond looks like," Jake replied. The air cracked open above them as the bond breaker descended toward the platform. Its presence made the coral twist and the lights flicker. Jake stepped forward, ready, the protector and the bonded, standing side by side. And the true battle for the bond had finally begun. The sky above the alien city darkened as the bond breaker lowered onto the platform. Its form was tall and thin, wrapped in shadowed armor that hissed with every movement. Its face was hidden behind a smooth black mask, but Jake could feel it. Staring at him, there was no emotion, no words, just pressure a weight that made the air harder to breathe. Thalia stood at Jake's side, her tentacles drawn close, the silver rings glowing bright white. She looked ready to fight, but Jake could tell she was afraid. This enemy was not just flesh and metal, it was something deeper. It carried silence like a weapon and erased feelings like smoke. The bondbreaker raised one hand, and a wave of invisible force shot forward. Jake flew back, crashing against the platform wall, the shield on his back saving his spine from breaking. He stood again, dizzy but still holding his blade. Thalia reached for him, but the bondbreaker stepped between them. A low sound hummed in the air, and Jake suddenly heard his own voice inside his mind. "You do not belong here," it said, not with sound but with thought. "You are the infection, the mistake, the last echo of a broken history." Jake pushed against the voice, shaking his head. "I didn't come here to destroy anything," he said. "I came here by accident, but I stayed by choice." The bondbreaker tilted its head. "There is no choice in the bond," it whispered. "There is only illusion and weakness." Then it reached for Thalia, its long fingers glowing with dark energy. She stood still, refusing to move, even though her skin trembled. Jake rushed forward and slammed his blade into the bondbreaker's side. There was no blood, but the thing flinched, its mask cracking slightly. A sharp hiss filled the chamber, and the bondbreaker's form shimmered, breaking into three shadows surrounding them. Jake and Thalia stood back to back. Her voice was steady, even in fear. "They feed on broken trust," she said. "If we lose faith, they win." Jake didn't hesitate. He opened his mind, letting Thalia's memory ring press against his thoughts. The moment he did, something inside him unlocked. He saw her past, her childhood, her fears, her quiet strength, and she saw his Earth's blue sky, his lonely job, the quiet wish to be seen. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their hearts connected without words, and light burst from the space between them. The silver rings floated around them, glowing brighter, faster, like stars swirling around a sun. The bondbreakers screamed as the light touched them, their shadows twisting. Jake raised his blade, now glowing with the bond's energy. Thalia stepped forward, her tentacles shining like wings. Together, they struck not with rage, but with unity. The light pierced the first shadow, then the second. The third tried to flee, but the glow chased it, wrapping it in warmth that could not survive. And then silence. The darkness cracked and faded, and the bondbreaker fell to its knees. The mask split open, revealing not a monster, but a face half alien, half human. Thalia stepped closer, eyes wide. "A lost one," she whispered. Jake looked at the figure, fading slowly like dust in the wind. It had once been bonded, once loved, but was consumed by fear. The light faded, and the platform was still. Above them, the enemy ships turned and vanished into the stars. The battle was over. The queen stood at the highest balcony, her voice ringing across the city. "The bond has returned, pure and strong. The darkness could not break it. Let all races know, the bond lives again." Cheers echoed through the city like ocean waves. Aliens raised their arms, their rings, their voices. Jake turned to Thalia, unsure what to say, but she only smiled and wrapped one tentacle gently around his hand. "You're part of this now," she said. He smiled back, tired but full. "I think I always was," he whispered later, as the city returned to calm, and lights danced gently across the domes. Jake sat by the edge of the memory pool, feet in the water. Thalia sat beside him, watching the ripples with quiet joy. He looked at her, his voice playful. "Your tentacles still look great today." She turned to him slowly, her eyes soft but glowing. "I know," she said, smiling. "But next time you say it, just be ready for the consequences." And Jake laughed, knowing he would, every single time.